Hello, Mayor and Council. It's Chief Heppel, your Incident Commander, talking to you from the Emergency Operations Center here at 2nd and Chambers. This week, we're changing the format up a little bit. Historically, for the last 8 or 9 weeks, I've been in front of you Wednesdays at noon. We're finally to the point that we can go ahead and do this using our technology and send you a link. And then certainly at the end of this presentation, if you have any questions, certainly send those back my direction, and I'll be happy to get an answer to you as best as I can. So again, welcome to the May 20th, 2020 City Council COVID-19 update. As always, just start with some of the data and the numbers. So we're still holding with about 66 cases. We saw a couple of cases pop up this weekend. Interestingly enough, those cases were actually a cohabitation component. So there were some strong epidemiological links to those, which is good. So that means when it comes to our case tracing and tracking, we're able to get those folks isolated and quarantined as appropriate, indicating that we're not proliferating that community spread. With that, we've had 59 recovered. We're still holding with our 2 deaths, and we have 5 folks that are resting at home. We don't have anybody indicating in the hospital at this time. So looking pretty good from that perspective. If we take a look to the right on the chart, remember while we're in phase 1 for 21 days, which started last week, we have to go 21 days still following those same guidance in terms of our 7 reasons to stay where we are, such as our PPE supply, our case tracking, but also that 14 days of continuous decreasing in positive cases. So that's what that chart here on the right continues to show, is that we're starting to see our cases are becoming more sporadic as we go forward, and those are all good indications. Some EEOC updates. So as I mentioned, Lane County was approved for their application starting May 15th, and we were able to go on to phase 1. Based on what we've heard and seen, people are reacting fairly well in Eugene, with some businesses are reopening, some are going slower than others. Many businesses are taking this opportunity to say, hey, we're not ready to open yet or prepared, and we'll come forward later on. We didn't see any overwhelming crowds, and we saw some pretty good social distancing going on in the parks this last weekend. And we're still hearing some concerns from people who aren't wearing masks, say in some of our more congested areas where we're not able to keep 6-foot distancing. And we're also sorry about that. And then the city of Eugene also here at the EEOC, we reestablished established a reopening team. And we're looking at a number of ways that the cities can support those local businesses. One of those is discussions around streeteries, where folks can use the right-of-way spaces as an example to expand their business and provide more volume to their business as well. So also local businesses can still email this team directly with questions or suggestions, and that's at bizhelp@eugene-or.gov. Again, that's bizhelp, BIZHELP, at eugene-or.gov, which you see there on your screen. So we're continuing with phase 1. As a reminder, we'll be in phase 1 for at least 21 days. Phase 2 would be going on into or starting in or around June 5th. As of the time of this presentation, the state is yet to release what that specific guidance is looking for or going to involve. However, we have seen a number of sector-specific guidances continue to come out this week, but that's been more correlated with phase 1. Some other goings on. So with our parks and right-of-ways, outreach teams continue to do their work with people that are staying in place and to keep their areas clean. In addition, the city's coordinating cleanup efforts to remove garbage from right-of-ways and within parks from many times we're seeing this from camps that are being abandoned or left. So kudos to the park ambassadors and our parks and open spaces folks working on that. Also in right-of-way areas, public works staff are identifying and removing garbage, on a weekly basis, just in the right-of-ways. Within the city park, staff will starting to encourage folks and folks at the sites to bag their garbage, and then they're coming back and returning it once it's been bagged. And that's been good to help us stay ahead of the trash accumulation. As we've said for the last couple of months, if a site has become a public health or safety hazard, is generating hazardous materials, or is causing significant environmental damage to a park or natural area, it may need to be posted for cleanup, and people will not be able to stay there during that time of cleanup. Moving on to our designated temporary shelter sites, we continue to monitor and evaluate our strategies while working with community partners in the county on transitioning people at these shelter sites. We've been utilizing a rapid resolution concept to help folks move to more stable situations. And we're really focused on options that are really non-congregate based on our current phase of the response. In terms of our long-term recovery, been working on this for a couple of weeks now. In fact, you had your first presentation, I believe, last Monday on this topic. And our long-term recovery team is continuing to review the damage assessment to gauge if and how national trends are being exhibited locally. They've also been getting input rather from business and special interests and subject matter experts, which continue to be vital in our understanding of truly what the impacts are, not just from the surface but deep down. We continue to see across all the recovery support functions, or RSFs sectors. And as a reminder, these functions include housing recovery, infrastructure recovery, health and social services, economic recovery, and natural and cultural resources. This work indicates that Eugene is not immune to the trends that we are seeing at the nationwide level, and these include a high volume of unemployment applications, large impacts to the service and retail industries, some strong impacts to nonprofit funding being decreasing or seeing downward trends. Our travel and entertainment industry has been heavily impacted as well, and certainly resources for childcare or daycare have been impacted as well. We continue to bring together across departmental staff to support the damage assessment and identify those strategies and actions for our plans moving forward. Moving on to staying with the EEOC updates and moving on to some of the finances. Cost to date for the COVID response for us have been around $3.5 million. Approximately $786,000 of that has been in what we call non-budgeted costs. So examples would be like personal protective equipment, overtime, shelter supplies, contracts, etc. And then about 2.7, almost 2.8 million of that is actually budgeted costs. So these are, as a reminder, regular employee costs other than overtime that would have been paid with or without this event. But what we do lose is some opportunity costs there. But what about some funding sources so far? So far, the airport has received $22.6 million from the FAA to support their operations. We've received $110,000 from Health and Human Services to the fire department to support the EMS piece, and that was actually phase 1. And there's also a phase 2 which you've applied for, but we're not sure what that reimbursement is or will look like. We've also applied for $255,000 from the Department of Justice for EPD, and also $840,000 for Housing and Urban Development, or HUB. This would go through our community development block grant process for appropriate distribution. On the 15th, fire staff worked on a $548,000 grant from the Assistance to Firefighter grant. So it's our AFG supplemental funding, and we're hoping to hear back some results on that by around mid-June. So excited that that's going to come back. Results of that would come back quickly. Making progress on our application there for the FEMA emergency response, what we call non-CARES funds. So these costs are to be submitted as soon as possible. Well, these costs will be submitted as soon as those funds become available. And we're working on cost information request for the state for the CARES Act coronavirus funds, which is actually due on the 22nd. So from the FEMA side of the house, I know I signed that FEMA emergency response funds application the other day. So that's good. And then we're working at the state level through the CARES Act, and we'll submit our costs for that on the 22nd. Some other funding being pursued is a general liability insurance claim for business closures and losses. The max amount on this per finance is $500,000. And a claim, we did file a claim for that back on the March 31st, and we're currently working with the underwriter on the needed documentation to receive some funding for that, but they're that potential option. Additional info just from some of our partners. So Lane County submitted an application for the Business Oregon's match funding program to replenish our small business emergency loan program. So we're applying for 400 to 600,000, depending on the comments from the rural cities. And we being the city of Eugene, we're certainly a part of that. And then from the Register Guard, you may have seen that the Oregon Housing and Community Services announced Monday it will give $929,000 to Lane County's Community Action Agency to provide some relief to renters. So a couple of reminders as I close out this week's presentation. We're coming up on a long holiday weekend, and maybe even see some sun. We've got rained out a little bit for our first weekend of phase one. But this is just another good time to remind people that even in phase one, we need to reinforce the importance of some of the basics that we continue to be in place. So, recommending folks wear masks in spaces where they can't maintain 6 feet. That hasn't gone away. We're still limiting our travel, so we're not. The state does not recommend taking long trips this weekend and to stay relatively close while limiting our gatherings. So 25 or less. And with that 25 or less, we still need to maintain our physical distancing with folks, especially folks who are from outside of our normal household who we don't normally congregate with. And of course, if you're sick or feel sick, please stay at home and always wash your hands. With that, thank you for your time and continued leadership throughout this event. I personally would like to thank you for all the support that you've given to the EEOC team. It's certainly been recognized and appreciated. And if you have any further questions, certainly feel free to reach out. Thank you.